Chapter 18. Parliament Square, Friday the 1st of June, 2463. This epidemic will shape the course of world politics. President Pablo de Anza of the USA, 2155. 4 days after the discovery of the case, James was deliberately loitering in Parliament Square, besides the north entrance to Westminster Abbey. It was made from glass and plastic, as the original face had been blown away by a massive suicide bomb during the community troubles of the 2030s. This modern part of the building had weathered the ravages of time better than the medieval portion, much of which was propped up by scaffolding. A patchwork of rusting sheets of corrugated iron covered the roof. He knew the delegates would be shortly returning from an inspection tour of New London Bridge and St. Paul's Cathedral. Guppy was leading it. The doctor had excused himself from the task by saying he was feeling unwell. Understandably, he was sulking. James was hoping to at least get the chance of personally introducing himself to Chang. He had tried to memorize a few pleasantries in Mandarin. He would ask the Chinaman if he was enjoying London, and, well, he hadn't worked out what to say after that. Somehow he'd have to ingratiate himself subtly. How, he didn't quite know, but it had to start with an introduction before they left at the end of the week. Eventually, a string of dispirited ponies plodded out of the woods and in small knots filed into the square. Seeing them mill around, kicking up the dust, James joined some of the stable lads to hold the reins while the guests dismounted. He made for Chang, but was too late. Another groom was already holding his pony. The best he could do was to assist someone close by. "You there!" a foreign voice called. "Young man!" James spun round. It was Chang. James looked over his shoulder in case he was addressing someone else behind him. "No, you," commanded Chang. "Me?" "Yes, you. I want to talk to you." Letting go of the reins he was holding, James went over to Chang, who grunted as he slid off his saddle. "Come, let's talk." He beckoned Xian to join them and said something in Mandarin. He led them, James suspected, deliberately to the rear of the group, where they could not be so easily seen. He stopped and faced him. "Young man, what's your name?" "James. James Joshua Hale." "James Joshua Hale. Good." He paused a moment or two, as if sizing him up. "I was impressed with the film which I am told you put together for the presentation." "Thank you," he replied, cursing himself almost immediately for not saying it in Mandarin. Then Chang, contrary to all that James had heard of Chinese circumventing the point, got straight to the matter at hand. "You know that Dr. Lyle Jain will be gone in 3 months?" Yes," he stumbled, taken off guard. "I had heard something." "And Xian here will replace him. I think everybody will see much faster progress." James glanced at the son-in-law and saw him give a nervous giggle. "So we are now considering who we want to keep, and who," he deliberated, his eyes on James, "will slow us down." "Yes." James had no doubt of what he implied, but the next question Chang asked him took him completely aback. "The other day something was found in London. What was it?" James's mind was reeling. They knew. How did they know? Who had told them? Can I play for time? A case was found. Basically a sort of briefcase." "That's right," said Chang. "A sort of case. Where was it found?" "In the underground, the metro." "Yes." "Piccadilly Station. In a train, Andy found Andy Munro." "Who is Andy Munro?" "He's a dive leader," he blurted out, looking about him to see if Andy was nearby. "He's been taking some professors on dives on the underground." This clearly caused some consternation with Chang, who jabbered something to Xian. This gave James some seconds to collect his thoughts. "Who has this case now?" asked Chan. "Dr. Lal." "And what was in the case?" James guessed they didn't know everything. He wanted to keep the snaz out of it. That he wanted for himself. "Oh, some money, air tickets, an electronic newspaper, that sort of thing." "What else?" He shrugged and waved his hands about. A mobile, some identification, and some identification, said Chang. So, who was he? Who was he? Repeated James, giving himself more time to think. He was someone called Lawrence Brubaker, basically some bigwig. I mean, some executive in Vivimus, you know, the Vivimus Corporation. Of course I do, snapped Chang. And wasn't there any damage? Oh, there was some, said James vaguely. Water pressure. Water pressure? Chang frowned. He probably didn't understand, and did not want to appear ignorant by asking. And you said a mobile? James stiffened. Yes. And? I tried to switch it on. He forced a little laugh and shrugged. 400 years. He had not lied, he told himself, but neither had he told the whole truth. The answer seemed to satisfy Chang. So, nothing else? He held James with a penetrating stare. Well, no. What else were you thinking of? He stammered. His exasperation probably convinced Chang, who said something to Xian. Anything else? Just the one case? Yes, just the one. And this Andy Munro found it in Piccadilly Underground? He spoke emphatically, wanting to make doubly sure of the facts. Yes. Thank you, James Joshua Hale, concluded Chang. Be wise and keep this conversation just between ourselves. I will remember the help you gave. Do you understand me? Yes, I think I do. He wondered if Chang would want to shake hands like the doctor always did, but he just stood there. So James attempted a clumsy little bow and said awkwardly, Zai Tian. As he slunk away, he felt the blood pounding in his head and his cheeks flushing. He had crossed a line. He had, whichever way he might try to justify it to himself, betrayed the doctor. He had also misled Chang, who looked as dangerous as a snake about to strike a rat, and he knew he was the rat. He promised himself that he would immediately conceal the case and the snaz. It was worth at least 5 years' salary to him. He would find another old case and leave that on the desk, with another ordinary mobile inside. I can't be too careful now, he told himself. What did he want? Came a sharp voice behind him. Turning around, he was surprised to see it was Bea. Chang, what did he want? She repeated, talking to him for a long time. Her pupils bore into his. Feigning affront by her manner, he answered, Oh, Chang, he just wanted to know what I did. And what did you tell him? Just that, hoping he sounded sufficiently innocent. Oh, and by the way, the doctor is definitely going. Thought you should know. She must have already heard the rumours, but still looked crestfallen when he said it. He did not mean to sound so gleeful. It was a reaction, that's all. She was headstrong and passionate, but she was all right, definitely one of the better ones. He could feel her eyes following him as he slunk away.